Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar. I'm going to hand you over to Peter Egerton shortly, our resident Microsoft MVP. He's going to be taking you through the latest updates on Endpoint Manager. So without further ado, I will hand over to Peter.
Very quick introduction then. So my name is Peter Egerton. I'm a principal consultant and technical lead for endpoint management at Power On Platforms. And I'm also a Microsoft Enterprise Mobility MVP, which means I, as well as the sort of day job, I guess, I get to work with Microsoft regularly through calls and visits on site and feedback on products and things like that. So I get good visibility of what's in the pipeline and some opportunity to shape that based on speaking to people like your good selves. And hopefully what I'm going to present to you should be useful to you, but it's a very evolving kind of landscape and there's a lot to pack in. So without further ado, let's move on. So the webinar today is around what's new in Microsoft Endpoint Manager. And I just wanted to clear up, because certainly based on conversations I've had out there, there's a little bit of confusion now actually. So Microsoft Endpoint Manager was announced at Ignite towards the end of last year. And to some extent it was an effort from Microsoft to bring in Config Manager and Intune as two main products, because there's an everlasting argument around which one might replace another, which one is the best, all this kind of stuff. So it's an effort from Microsoft to get rid of any of those nerves or any of those sort of myths, and basically bring in endpoint management into one place. But actually a lot of people don't realize it's more than just Config Manager and Intune. So as you can see on there, it's Config Manager, which up to sort of October, November last year was known as System Center Config Manager, SCCM, previously SMS. Now really the proper name for this is Endpoint Manager, Configuration Manager. Now that does get a little bit further confusing, but that's the official name. We'll not worry too much about that. But as you can see, it draws in Config Manager. There's an item called Desktop Analytics. So if you're familiar with Windows Analytics, Desktop Analytics is the replacement for that. That went in, it went public towards the end of last year, and Windows Analytics theoretically, with small caveats, is no longer available. Intune, as you're probably aware, is the kind of cloud-based mobile device management solution, and that includes everything from phones, tablets, into Windows 10 devices. And that's a very strong growth area. It's a cloud-based service, and I'm sure you're all very well aware of that. Windows Autopilot also comes under Endpoint Manager. And that's the kind of provisioning methodology for Windows 10, the very modern provisioning methodology, which is a similar approach to what you might call operating system deployment, but it's a much more modern approach. You just leave the operating system on there and you apply policies or changes or profiles to that as you would maybe a mobile phone, for example. So that's the approach for Windows Autopilot. That doesn't necessarily replace OSD, but that's a kind of different conversation piece, which maybe we'll save for another time. We've also got Defender ATP, or Advanced Threat Protection, that comes under Endpoint Manager. And I'm conscious not everyone will have access to that because it is an extended license. However, there's a lot of focus within the product, and there's a lot of good stuff coming out of the security side of Microsoft nowadays. If you're not aware or you've not used Defender in sort of Windows 10 on its own, it's a much better product than it ever used to be. So don't just sort of look past that one. Certainly take a look at it and some of the enhanced features that are available in ATP. And again, that's an ever evolving sort of progressing product. And then of course Azure Active Directory. There's a lot of features that are sort of fixed around Azure Active Directory as the pivot point, and we'll just touch on that a little bit more. Okay, so let's first address, I guess, the big one to some extent, Config Manager. Config Manager has a release cadence 3 times a year, but once a month we see a technical preview as well. If I'm being really honest, I would have expected that we see the latest Config Manager current branch release by the point I've done this webinar actually, which would have been really well timed. However, we haven't seen that yet. I know it's coming soon. So just keep your eyes and ears open for that, and that will be current branch 2002 or 2002. Slightly strange namings now because we're in 2020. But what's the latest in that? So what I can do is basically look at technical previews, and what I've been trying to do is some way predict what we might see coming down the line and how the product is shaping. So just to touch on a few things we've got in the latest technical previews, I put 2002.2 in February and January. We actually saw 2 technical previews. They're cramming a lot of stuff in, presumably just before the full release, but we'll see what happens with that. And I just wanted to call out some of the bigger things or more relevant things that might be in there, because there is actually quite a lot when you start drilling into the detail. So one of the nice things that certainly we're looking forward to is token-based authentication for Cloud Management Gateway. So if you've got a Cloud Management Gateway, or a CMG as it's abbreviated, it's a little bit tricky to kind of provision devices if you need certificates and this kind of thing in place, because if it's a fresh device and it's not got the certificate already, then how do you actually give it the certificate if it's a fresh device? So, we've got some feature in there where we can do token-based authentication, so that's a really quite nice feature. There should be a lot of interest in that when that appears. Don't know if that'll be the next release. Maybe it'll be later down the year. We'll see. Sometimes they bake it for a little bit longer in tech previews. Tenant Attach is another item that I wanted to show you as well. So if you watched any of the Microsoft Ignite videos or demonstrations, you will have noticed as the sort of big selling point of Endpoint Manager, we've got this single pane of glass approach in a web browser. And what that means is if we are co-managing devices from Config Manager and Intune together, we can actually just work with one console, which is nice because obviously we've got 2 different consoles for those products. Now, if I can manage to work my PC, which has not proven very good so far, I can hopefully just show you a little bit of that. If I go in here, now I'm in the Microsoft Endpoint Manager Admin Center. Now this is, just to be clear, devicemanagement.microsoft.com, or there's a shortcode aka.ms/DMAC. If I go in there, what I've done is I've co-managed a technical preview lab in here, and then just added a few devices just to show you what we've got in there. If I can find my devices, that would be very helpful. Here we go, 4 and 5. So just to back up that, actually, what you can see is the compliance is managed by a config manager. Corporate is it's a corporate owned, and what you can see here is the tenant attach in action. Now it's fairly straightforward and fairly simple at the moment in technical preview. We can basically instigate a simple machine policy sync, user policy sync, and get the device to go check for applications. So we've got some quite straightforward features and functions in there, but it's really nice to see because this is all being driven from a web portal, and that's going down through Config Manager as you would generally do it from the Config Manager console. Now, what I like about this is not necessarily the functionality that's in there right now. It's fairly straightforward, but it gives you an idea of where it's going in terms of sort of device management, endpoint management, Config Manager and Intune together. So that's there right now in technical preview. I don't know if we'll see that in the 2002 release of Config Manager because it's a wizard that you run in Config Manager. You have to keep your eyes and ears out open for that one. Hopefully we will see that generally at this time of month in March. I would expect to have seen it, as I say, but maybe we'll see it next week. We'll just have to look out for that one. What else have we got? Improvements with orchestration groups. Sorry. Now, a lot of people aren't even aware of orchestration groups. They've been around for a little while in a product called server groups, and they've renamed it to orchestration groups. And the point of this is, think of a scenario where you have maybe a cluster and you've got multiple nodes in a cluster, and when you patch that cluster, you don't want to do them all at once. You maybe want to take only half of those at a time or a third of those at a time, and you want to do a little bit of kind of pre and post checking on that one. It's a similar concept. So in Config Manager, you can manage servers or you can manage clients. You can use this for either. If I can drop into my little demo, I've got one here. I've just created a very, very basic orchestration group. And please don't get mixed up. These are not collections. This is just a layer over the top of that. And what we can do is, I'll just show you the properties. It's not going to be a deep dive session at all because I've got a lot to cover in a relatively short time. but you can see there's a timeout for that group. I can choose members, so I've just got a couple of VMs in here. And what I can do is allow some basic rules of only allow one of those machines to be updated at once, or I can choose 50%, or I can choose 80% or whatever, or you can simply choose the order of sequence. So if you've got a specific application that needs devices or servers that need to be patched in a certain order, you can do that. And then we can of course do prescripts and postscripts. So simple things like stopping services, maybe running checks against certain items to see if they're there or running. So that's quite a nice thing. There's been a lot of improvements in orchestration groups over the past few technical preview releases, so that's something that's really nice and useful to see. So go have a look at that one. What else? Microsoft Edge, the Chromium version, whether you want to call it Edgium or Credge, whatever takes your fancy. We've got management tools now in both Config Manager and Intune actually for managing Edge Chromium, and the reason for that is they now update outside of Windows on their own cadence. But we've got management tools in there if we want to deploy stable release, dev release, that kind of thing. So that's quite a nice thing. I've done a blog on that. If any of you are aware of a sort of blog that I run, morethanpatches.com, I've done a post on that. I think that made it onto the Power on Platforms site as well. So go take a look at that one. I just wanted to call out BitLocker management, which is quite a nice addition. So there's been a lot of talk over the past probably 2 years almost actually about the future of MBAM as a product, and that's the Enterprise BitLocker Administration Toolset. What they've basically done is added a lot of the functionality of that into Config Manager. So in theory, you can do very, very similar capabilities that you can with MBAM, now just built into Configuration Manager. So I'm not going to dwell on the details of that right on this call, but certainly go take a look. It's getting there in terms of parity for MBAM now. Certainly if you're keeping up to the latest releases, you should be able to work with BitLocker really well, especially compared to MBAM. So that allows you to get rid of maybe MBAM and start integrating into this product. And as I say, look out for Config Manager current branch 2002 soon. I expect to see that maybe in the next week or two. So just keep a lookout for that one. Just on a side note, actually, if that comes out and I get a chance, we've talked about doing a separate little webinar for that one, just so we can run through some of those features, because there's normally quite a bit in there. Okay, moving on. Desktop analytics. Notably, there's actually not quite as much listed in this one, but that generally coincides in some ways with a release of Config Manager, but often you get features that are pushed at the back end in terms of Azure on a sort of monthly basis. But at the moment, it seems that they're doing a lot of enhancements or fixes to existing things. So in terms of major features, there's nothing massively to note in there. What there is support for multiple Azure Active Directory tenants. So if you're an organization that has multiple tenants, what you can do is pull all those tenants into one workspace for desktop analytics, which is quite useful. I know a lot of companies that will get some use out of that. What we've also got is identifying compatibility safeguards. So what that means is if you're doing a compatibility check against a device, there's safeguards on there now where it can basically give you a little bit more information and stop you going ahead, basically, or if you've got a known issue that's with compatibility on a certain item. So that was quite a nice one. Again, I'm not going to drill into this in a lot of detail on this particular call. User experience analytics is something that is big on the agenda. It's something that I would expect to be seeing more and more of. And the basic concept of that is if you're using desktop analytics to review your compatibility and assessment of your devices and applications, that in turn relates to user experience. So theoretically, if you can reduce your boot times, reduce your application crashes, you can then leverage some of that information and then obviously come out with a better user experience score, if you like. So not an awful lot there on desktop analytics at the moment, but watch this space. I expect to see quite a bit more of that, certainly in the coming maybe 6 months or so. Okay, moving quickly on to Intune. getting conscious of time. Apologies if you need to drop, then feel free. There's a recording available at the end, and you'll get emailed that one. For Intune, if you're not aware, Intune actually releases monthly updates, and they push through your tenant on a kind of sliding scale, depending on what region your tenant is in. They're pushed out over a few days, so not everything comes at once. They start from Asia and work their way back to West Coast US. What's new? So again, when you start looking through what's new, there's a lot of small things, enhancements, little GUI changes, that kind of thing, but I've been through and called out a few little things. Application protection, or MAM if you like, is now available for better mobile threat defense on iOS only. So this is consider better mobile threat defense as an AV almost for your devices. So sometimes I do get asked this question when I'm out and about working with customers: what do people do around antivirus on mobile phones and tablets? Some people do something, some people do nothing. This is just saying there's application protection built around that now. So that is containerization of the application, so that we can push MFA or authentication or something like that when people start using the application on their devices. What we've also got is bulk remote actions, which is quite a nice one. So again, I've written this one up. If you want to go take a look, we can do a bulk action on a group of devices. So traditionally, if you wanted to restart a device, you'd have to do it maybe one at a time, something like that, or push a custom notification. You're limited to doing it to a predefined group or something along those lines. What we can do now is be a little bit more sort of ad hoc and do remote actions such as restarts, custom notifications, that kind of thing. So that's quite a nice addition if you're into your Intune. Tenant Attach, similar to the one that I just showed you, that's obviously now in the Endpoint Manager Admin Center. And note that even though I'm referring to Intune, I'm showing you a screenshot of the Admin Center, the Endpoint Manager Admin Center. That's really where you should be going now for consuming your Intune. The Intune blade does still exist in the Azure portal, but this is probably the place that you should be going to from now on. It's certainly the place where a lot of the functionality is being added. Changing primary user for Windows devices. So again, sounds a relatively straightforward thing, but a big problem for a lot of people. If you reprovision or pass on a device, then you can't necessarily change the user for that previously, so you'd have to do a re-enrollment. That's rolling out in preview now, but that's quite a nice little thing. I've put DO there. DO changes to Win32 apps. DO is delivery optimization. This is how we control maybe a little bit of bandwidth throttling or peer-to-peer sharing between devices. A lot of that functionality is built into Windows and things like Office 365 updates that come down, and applications, if they're pushed out as Windows 32 applications from Intune, they have delivery optimization built in. We've got a little bit more control on that now to choose whether the Windows 32 apps are running in background or running in foreground. And I just wanted to note as well that there's a new reporting framework coming into Intune, which is very welcome to a lot of people. You'll probably see that in preview if you go look at your Intune tenant. That's based around Azure Monitor. Probably reporting is maybe one of the slightly weaker areas of Intune in some respects, but that's certainly getting better and better all the time. So there's a lot of effort being put into that one. Go take a look. What else? Autopilot. So I'm going to make an assumption that many of you are aware of Autopilot, at least what it is to some extent. I wanted to make a note that remote hybrid Azure join, as far as I am aware, is in preview, private preview that is. So this is the much awaited, long awaited sort of scenario of sending a device out to an end user, and that end user from wherever they may be being able to do a hybrid join, that is joining Azure AD and joining your on-premises Active Directory. So that's been requested a lot. I believe that that's going through private preview at the moment with lots of different VPN providers. So keep an eye out for that one. Maybe towards the middle of this year, I would hope we could see something tangible on that one. I'm also just calling out Windows 10 20H1, which is obviously the next release of Windows. That's due imminently based on the sort of month and time of year that we're in. What generally happens with Autopilot. Some of the functionality for Autopilot is built into Windows itself. Some of it is obviously built into the back end. So just keep an eye out for that one. There'll be some new features in there. You'll see on the screenshot on the right, I've just shown a screenshot of White Glove. If you're not aware of that, that's in Autopilot now. We can basically pre-provision the device to some extent with applications. So we can preload applications onto a device, almost kind of sysprep it, if you're used to the old terminology. We can kind of reseal that and then send it out. The end user gets the same Autopilot experience that people love. But it's already got the applications on there, so that can be quite a nice save for bandwidth and things like that. What else? Integration with config manager task sequences is coming soon. What that means is if you're provisioning with Autopilot, you can basically do something called a bootstrap a task sequence. So you can tell it at the end of the Autopilot experience, go run this config manager task sequence. And that works by, for example, running through Autopilot, installing the config manager agent, getting it registered, and then running a task sequence. That might be for onboarding, that might be for pushing applications out if you've got your applications or configurations in config manager. So that's not there yet, but keep your eyes out. That will be there soon, as far as I can understand. That's been talked about publicly. That's not a preview here. Go see a guy called Michael Niehaus who owns this to much extent. I just wanted to add as well, we've got this Autopilot update node post 0-day patch update check. So what that means is, as you can see on the timeline, roughly how the Autopilot process works, or the out-of-box experience process, should I say. There's a check being put in now to make sure Autopilot itself is up to date, and that will happen at that point. And also enhanced troubleshooting. That's something that's coming all the time with Autopilot. It's something that's acknowledged as maybe not as good as it could be. If you know, when it works great, but when it doesn't work, it can be a little challenging in places trying to figure out what went wrong. Okay, so I just wanted to add that's certainly on the radar, and there's a lot of effort going into that. If someone can interrupt me if I'm going far too over on time, but I appreciate I started late. What else have we got? Defender Advanced Threat Protection. This one is kind of a little bit different because it's as I say, it's an additional license or additional fee on top of your standard maybe E3 that most people seem to have. It's an E5 license, or you can add it on in different ways. But basically, it's the really good stuff of using Defender. It's the enhanced capabilities and functionality. Looking through what's new and what's not new, they've obviously stopped doing support for macOS Sierra 10.1.2 because Apple themselves, have stopped providing updates for that version. So the fix for that one is basically get yourself up onto a new version very simply. So just wanted to call that one out. Integration into Intune. So I will show at some point the screenshots in there at the moment. You can see on the setup on the right hand side, we've got Defender ATP. What we can do is we can tie Defender ATP into your Intune, take signals from your devices in Intune, whether it's compliant or not compliant, things like that, link that in with conditional access so that you can then render the device compliant or not, and say yes, you can or cannot get into this policy, this application. Or as you can see at the bottom there, we've got unsanctioned apps, so we can also now block access to unsanctioned apps. So this is referring to certain cloud-based apps or enterprise apps. We can use Defender ATP, and just to be clear, I know I've said Mac there, this is across Mac and Windows, which is quite unique in a lot of these products. We can block some access to those applications, which is quite a nice thing that was added recently. I just wanted to add a little link in there as well. If you want to get a bit more familiar with MDATP, Microsoft have put together quite a nice page with a few videos on there, which is quite a good little sort of site to go and look at to get a bit of learning. What I did wanted to show you as well, and if I can with time, if I just go into the Endpoint Admin Center around the security, sort of landscape overall, you can see we've got a few things that dropped into preview, and I think these only came either this or last week from memory. But what we can do is then start drilling down and creating policies from here. And the idea being that we just use this one endpoint manager admin center. You can see AV, encryption, firewall, attack surface reduction policies. So you can create those kind of policies in there. Just show you the kind of things that we can set in it. Not an awful lot at the moment, but you can see the kind of stuff that's in there. So if you're used to those policies, the idea is that you can come to this one place now and set those, rather than having to switch through all the different portals that Microsoft have got. Same with account protection, there's one in there as well. And where Mac is an option for that particular item, then Mac's also included in that as well. Okay, moving on. Last item on there is Azure Active Directory. So Azure Active Directory is updating and changing all the time. But again, just running through and calling out some of the decent sort of interesting new features that I've seen. Azure AD support for FIDO2 security keys, and I've called out hybrid in there. So this is a really nice addition for a lot of organizations. A lot of organizations are not currently able to, or it's too involved at the moment to do a full native Azure Active Directory join of their devices and host their users solely in Azure. So a lot of organizations are hybrid. Now, previously it wasn't capable to use FIDO2 keys. The picture on there that you can see, they're UB keys, they're FIDO2 keys. What you can do is basically use this as an authentication method. So similar to, you can use a PIN to log onto your device like you might do with Windows Hello. It's another method of being able to authenticate and just basically remove passwords. That's the simple idea. As I say, they're UB keys. There's other vendors out there that provide all kinds of different ones, but support for that in hybrid environments, which is significant because everyone wants to get rid of passwords to some extent. They're a pain to try and remember, and keeping all those post-it notes stuck on the underside of your mouse mat can be a pain at times. So keys are quite a nice option for that one. February 2020, Microsoft added a whole bunch more of federation support for apps. The lists on the right, I'm not going to run through those, don't worry. They do fairly frequently add in more applications for federation. And what that means is that federates well with Azure Active Directory enterprise apps. You can use your single sign-on capabilities in some of those. It's just basically native integration. And that list is increasing all the time. But that was quite a nice recent addition too. My account, so if you go to myapps.microsoft.com, if you're a Azure AD user, what you can do is provide applications like a company store almost to that end user. I think I signed one in just to show you there. So there's a preview option. You have to enable this in Azure Active Directory. I don't have an awful lot in there, but you can see the look and feel of this, if you're familiar with the older one, is a little bit more kind of I guess user friendly. So they've done a bit of a reskin on that. It's quite a nice addition. Almost there. And I thought this was a good one as well. Azure Active Directory business to consumer phone sign up and sign in using custom policy. The idea behind this is if you're using B2C accounts, you can allow that end user to register and sign in with just one-time passwords, which are basically SMS messages sent to their device. So there's no fuss with passwords, etc. That's in preview at the moment. Just be aware of that one. But again, I thought that was really quite a nice addition in there. And I think we got there in the end, despite the technical challenges. So I think a couple of my colleagues have been manning the chat. So I don't know if there's any outstanding questions that I can answer, or we want to take those away and answer, just considering time.
No questions at all at present.
Magic, appreciate that. Okay, in that case, I guess I can hand over to my colleague who can close up for us, and I think the recording will be made available. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right. Thanks for bearing with us, everyone. We will be sending out the recording, and as I said, I'm going to timestamp everything, so if you want to jump between any of the topics that Pete's covered, you can do that easily. If you have any further questions that you think of after the webinar, please feel free to email us on info@poweronplatforms.com. We're always here to help, so any questions you have, just send them through and someone will get back to you. But have a good weekend, everyone. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you all soon.